Okay, so hello and welcome to Psychosocial Wednesdays. I hope that we all join in. I'm Manca Švara from Slovenia, and I'm part of the Jungian team that organizes Psychosocial Wednesdays talks, publishes books and the yearbook, and coordinates various events and masterclasses. I'm happy to be presenting today, and you can expect to see me more in the future. Other members of the Jungian team are Mikhail Stankiewicz, who is helping with the Zoom today. Thank you. Ludmila Osterman, Kathleen Kirgin, and Chiara Capri. Jungian was founded by Dr. Stefano Carpani with the aim of promoting contemporary initiatives for analytical psychology and neo-Jungian studies. I like to think of Psychosocial Wednesdays as a digital living room that provides a global platform for colleagues from various psychological fields to share their ideas and creative work. I'd like to take this moment to quickly announce our latest release from Jungian book series, published this October, called Waxing Femininity, by the Danish author Pia Skogemann. The book is available on Amazon and is very easy to order as Kindle, paperback, or hardcover version. But now turning to today's talk. I'm delighted to introduce our speaker today, Ruth Williams. Ruth is a training and supervising analyst at the Association of Jungian Analysts in London. She is the author of Jung, The Basics, published by Routledge in 2019, and Exploring Spirituality from a Post-Jungian Perspective, Clinical and Personal Reflections, published by Routledge in 2023. She is currently working on 2 future publications. Today, Ruth, we will explore themes from her latest book. The talk will delve into the nature of soul, psyche, and chakras. In Jungian thought, psyche and soul often overlap, with soul representing a deep, slow-moving force, while spirit acts more swiftly. For Williams, spirit is an experiential phenomenon linked to chakras, the energy centers connecting the body and the spiritual realm. Ruth will also share insights on how Jungians work with soul and spirit in the consulting room. After the presentation, there will be time for discussion and your questions. But now, Ruth, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. That's very kind of you. And thank you to Stefano and the whole team for inviting me. I'm very, very honoured and pleased to be here. Should we put the first slide up on the PowerPoint, Michael? Is it up? I'm not sure I can see it because I'm on gallery view. Where is it going to appear? There's nothing up here so far.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I'll start, and we'll come to that whenever it gets up. It doesn't matter. But I wanted to begin by saying that what I'm talking about today is based on a chapter in the book, and this is the book, which has a beautiful cover designed by my dear friend Sandy Damon, which I absolutely love, and it picks up the kind of spirit of what I'm writing about, actually. And in the book, what I aim to do is to explore the deeper meanings of life and how we navigate them. And originally, the title I wanted was Humans, what was it? Humans Being Grace. But Routledge, it's just not a Routledge title, so they made me change it to this. But it's still, I mean, that's still the kind of main essence of it for me. And Mensch is a Yiddish word, which some of you might be familiar with. And it's about kind of being a real human being. And that, to me, is the essence of what this is about. Sort of being a decent human being, having humanity. And that includes living ethically with integrity. So it's also about being rather than doing, which for me can so easily become a kind of tyranny of consumption and over rationality. Even one-upmanship, which stimulates so much of the disharmony in our world. And grace is the thread, or the mystery, you might say, which is behind it all and binds it all together. And that for me is what makes life meaningful or purposeful, and makes it potentially joyful and spiritually fulfilling. And that's perhaps something that we can get on to talking about later if that interests you. Here we are, that's the opening slide. So just to give you a kind of quick overview of the book, it ranges from introducing practices to the novice, to looking at spiritualism and the possible realm of life, the possible life beyond this realm. So it ranges quite widely. And in the first book, I sort of take quite a personal tack, looking at spirituality itself and how that can be accessed and practiced, and most importantly, how it can be experienced, as well as how it manifests in nature and ecology, looking at our responsibilities to this precious planet, which we're doing our best to destroy, sadly. So part one sort of sets the scene with an overview of a spiritual perspective, which is really the heart of the book. And then part two kind of goes into various dilemmas that we encounter in life, covering things like purpose of life and how we intuitively know. In that section, there are some vital components of a spiritual perspective, as well as addressing lots of questions which I'm sure most people are really grappling with or have grappled with. And in part three, I go into various what I think of as puzzles, like predestination, destiny and fate, synchronicity, and all that good stuff, as well as a brief look at three divinatory practices: tarot, I Ching, and astrology. And that's one of the places where I link to grace in particular, because my shtick is that synchronicity is the manifestation of grace. And in the last part of the book, I look at what I refer to as the ineffable, which is some of the most challenging matters we ever face, really, such as the kind of limits of existence and even phantoms and the transcendent, but all really the sacred and deeply mysterious. But today, the bit I'm covering today is beginning with a bit about soul, then something about spirit, and then moving on to chakras. And if time allows, I'll say a bit about the research project, but I suspect we won't get to that because I don't think we've got enough time for that, but let's see how it goes. So the first bit about soul. Listening to the call of the soul and spirit is our quintessential task in life for me. Learning to distinguish between the different calls on our attention isn't easy, of course, and that's the challenge we're constantly set. So we often might wonder, is this intuition? Is it fear? Is it anxiety? Is it paranoia? And sometimes it's really difficult to tell the difference. And equally, you might think, is that the call of my soul? And individuation is about aligning with your soul, searching to find your purpose. And so I contend that the path of individuation is the unfolding of the soul's journey. And listening to the sometimes quiet insistence of the soul's beckoning is definitely a challenge, because there are so many distractions pulling our attention and kind of chatting to us from inside ourselves that kind of move us away from that task. Our concentration isn't that great. And of course, it's impossible to be completely concentrated all the time. I mean, nobody can live like that. But we often attune to that beat through dreams and synchronicities, as I'm sure everybody here is familiar with. And dreams are for some the only connection to a life beyond the kind of everyday realm. So that makes it a really vital and meaningful connection. And synchronicities, which we're all so fond of course, they can just land in impossible to ignore ways and bring such a sense of meaning, a sense of being guided, I find. And so the trick is to kind of pick up on that track and to follow it. And of course, the more aligned you are to your heart and to your soul, the more rooted you are in your body and your instincts, the lighter your step, the easier it becomes to follow that call. Of course, following your own star is never and can never be easy. And I came across a lovely story by mythologist Michael Mead, where he recounts this great tale of a chap called Isaac, who was called by a dream 3 times. And it tells him to travel to a distant city, saying that's where he'll find great treasure at the foot of a bridge. And finally, after the 3rd dream, he can resist it no longer, even though he feels really foolish and inhibited from digging for this treasure, as when he gets to the bridge, there are guards around, and he just feels stupid. So after days pacing up and down, trying to wait for moments when the guards aren't present and aren't kind of witnessing what he's doing, one of the guards approaches Isaac and asks if he's all right. And Isaac swallows his kind of feelings of vulnerability and his foolishness about taking a dream seriously and tells the guard why he's there. And the guard agrees. He says, yes, it is silly to listen to a dream, but then goes on to tell Isaac that he himself had had a dream the previous night, where a man called Isaac is told to return home and look behind the loose bricks of his hearth, where he'll discover a great quantity of gold. And I came across another version of this story actually from Germany, which is basically the same thing, but a man finds a copper strongbox full of gold coins. But I just think that's a very nice way into thinking about this and to take one's dream seriously. But soul is at the very heart of these depth encounters in life. And we may not use that language, but we certainly recognize that depth when we experience it. Can we have the next slide up, Michal? I've got a quote here from Marion Woodman, where she says, "We all experience soul moments in life, when we see a magnificent sunrise, hear the call of the loon, see the wrinkles on our mother's hands, or smell the sweetness of a baby. During these moments, our body, as well as our brain, resonates as we experience the glory of being a human being." That's very much a good day, I think. But you get the gist. And most of us long for what we call a soulmate, although I hate to use that term as it's become so cliched. But nonetheless, it's certainly what I think I can say it's what we all long for. Because the company of those with whom we feel that affinity makes life feel fully lived. It makes life feel really valuable and meaningful, because we feel understood at those moments when we resonate with each other's souls. In classical antiquity, souls are seen as already connected in the world soul or anima mundi. So perhaps it's no wonder we feel something move when we feel a fellow traveller whose soul touches ours. And that leads me, of course, to James Hillman, who in 1964 wrote, can I have the next slide, please, Michal? He wrote, Soul is not a scientific term, and it appears very rarely in psychology today, and then usually with inverted commas as if to keep it from infecting its scientifically sterile surround. And I'm not sure that much has changed in straight psychology in the decades since Hillman wrote that. But in analytical psychology, soul is at the forefront of our explorations, and that's what I'm trying to draw out here. Hillman was obviously the preeminent writer on the subject of soul. And he goes on to play with the idea that alongside a case history, analysts might take a soul history when first meeting a patient, which I find a really interesting idea. Next slide, please, Michal. The way he talks about it, he says case history reports on the achievements and failures of life with the world of facts. But the soul has neither achieved nor failed in the same way. Its material is experience, and its realizations are accomplished not just by efforts of will. The soul imagines and plays. Taking a soul history means capturing emotions, fantasies, and images by entering into the game and dreaming the myth along with the patient. Taking a soul history means becoming a part of the other person's fate. Soul's facts are symbols and paradoxes. And as always, I mean, he just puts it so beautifully. And as this audience knows, undoubtedly, psyche and soul are used interchangeably in Jungian discourse. But soul for Jung was the very essence of relationship. And so a good deal of his mature work was concerned with that. And psychotherapist, of course, means healer of souls, which is in such stark contrast to the current political moves based on financial expediency to turn state-provided therapy in this country by the NHS. And I think similar things are going on in many other places. They're sort of turning it into a manualized practice, sometimes even excluding the presence of an individual altogether and using a computer program, which I find absolutely bewildering, because nothing could be further from the actual origins of what true psychotherapy is about, when two individuals meet together in a room. And the morning when I was writing this, I was listening to the radio, and there was a report that the British Medical Association, which is the kind of top-notch medical organisation, they'd published a piece of research showing the results of working with a computerized therapist, inverted commas, and a cognitive-based human therapist were indistinguishable. I mean, I find that just utterly gobsmacking, really. I mean, I know AI and computerized stuff is coming on by great leaps and bounds, but if there's no difference, I just dread to think, really. But it's this sort of direction which is exacerbating the class apartheid that's created, where those with few financial resources are left to take that scrap from the table, while the middle classes who can afford it are able to access proper therapy with a practitioner and a modality of their own choosing. So again, nothing could be further from the origins of the meeting of two individual souls in the service of healing. And to me, that's not a good situation. And indeed, I would go so far as to say that it's damaging of the soul. I most certainly wouldn't want therapy with a computer. Both soul and spirit may be experienced as an aspect of sexuality, as well as more broadly as the deepest layers of our being. So when our souls or spirits meet in sexual congress, the greatest depths or heights are encountered. And tantric practice, of course, is a great way of developing those depths of intimacy, although I'm not going to go into that further here. That's for another day, perhaps. The way I see it is that soul can be experienced like a kind of bass note, whereas spirit can be like a high ethereal tone. And the arc of the journey of the soul is slow and discernible over years, whereas the spirit can move like lightning. Not always, of course, but can. And in the same spirit, soul is connected to earth and water, which links us or roots us to the earth, which creates a channel to receiving the healing energy which comes up from the earth. So soul connects us through our bodies to the chthonic levels, whereas spirit is connected to fire and air. And metaphorically, it takes us up. Our spirit rises, transcending this kind of daily realm. Can I have the next slide, please, Michal? And so you might say that soul is like a membrane that links the physical world to the spirit. It gives us access on the physical plane to spiritual experience. Is everyone hanging in there? It's so difficult to tell on Zoom because I can't see anyone's reactions. I can't really see anybody very much. So, so I don't know at all. But I'll plow on. But if there's anything that you do want to say, of course, there is time at the end for questions. But if you're bursting, do say so, and I'll do my best to respond. But I'm going to turn to spirit next, and to say that for Jung, as for me, spirit is not a concept, but rather it's an empirical phenomenon which may be experienced by anyone and everyone. And when I refer to spirit, I'm not referring to, sorry, I am referring to the spiritual aspect of ourselves. I'm referring to the transcendent dimension of existence rather than paranormal spirits, which is the subject of another chapter. So spirit is also seen as the energizing element in creativity, whereby you might feel as if the words are writing themselves or the painting is painting itself. And I'm absolutely sure that lots of people, oh, not yet, yeah, here might have experienced that, because there are lots of people who've written and stuff here. And that's a common experience that people talk about. So the Newman or the uplifting nature of a work of art may be experienced as spiritual. And that's not to say simply that these works were inspired by spirit, as much as moved or animated by spirit. And an example of that might be that when I'm writing, I'll sometimes wake with words going through my mind, which I always dash to catch as I wake up. As they're often absolute nuggets of gold, which were not in my conscious mind any more than a dream image that I wake from. And so those are kind of really precious things to catch. And in the first book I wrote, Jung the Basics, I cited lots of examples of artworks and scientific findings which had appeared in dreams, such as a very famous example is Paul McCartney, who dreamt his song Yesterday. And McCartney called it magic. And it is a kind of magic. But there are copious examples of inspiration having arrived in dreams, which feel as if they're a gift from God, or from the other side, you might want to call it. But you will interpret it through the lens of your own belief system and have many other ideas about the source. But however you conceptualize it, they leave an indelible impression and are experienced as precious. It's to spirit that we aim our prayers, for those that do. And of course, you might not call it praying, but it might just be a kind of talking to yourself, but you're still talking to that same aspect of yourself. And maybe you experience that being answered. Although often, sometimes, it's not directly in the way that we wished or that we asked for, because the spirit has greater wisdom beyond our perspective as to what we might need. Which is why I talk a little bit somewhere else about what's it called, where people call up. What's it called? Ordering. I forgot. What's it called? Something ordering. Cosmic ordering. There was a phase of that in about the 80s, where people would talk about kind of putting out a menu of what they wanted from the spirit. And actually, it does work, but it's ego-driven to approach it in that way. And so when I did it, when I first heard about it, I just sort of played with the idea and got exactly what I wanted. But of course, there was a fault because I didn't know exactly what I needed in that moment. And the essential bit of what I was asking for was missing. So I really do not go down that path anymore. And I try to open myself to what the wisdom higher than me knows I need. For those interested in looking at Jung's perspective on spirit academically, a fantastic journal article appeared probably a couple of years ago now. Oh, no, I think it was 2020. And it's by this Danish practitioner called Gitz Johansen. And it looks at the development of Jung's use of the term across a lifetime and incorporates a really broad spectrum of views. And they discuss Jung's Spirit of the Times and Spirit of the Depths, all from the Red Book, of course. And it's a really good resource. It's a really good resource for anyone interested in kind of digging deeper into the subject. And of course, Jung used those terms, the spirit of the time and spirit of the depths, to elaborate his own thinking about the world of soul and spirit as he experienced it. And they certainly have a numinous quality and operate at a deep level, but maybe distinct from what I'm referring to as the spiritual dimension of life, which I think of as the divine spark, which animates us all, and which some call God. And to clarify, I'm not referring to a kind of supernatural God who resides somewhere kind of up there or out there, but to an energy which is omnipresent, meaning both out and most specifically inside each of us, at a level in which, frankly, inside and outside have no meaning at all. And it's what the alchemists referred to as quintessentia, or the quintessence of our very nature. And that's different to what Jung referred to as the spirit of the times and of the depths, which he thought of as God images in a more metaphorical or mythological sense. Although obviously he had his own relationship with soul and spirit as well. And another way of looking at that is that archetypes may carry the message of spirit in the sense of the right people appearing at the right time, or archetypal characters in myth and fairy tale carrying this kind of salient message, which is needed in order to get on the right track in life at any moment. Jung saw spirit along those lines when he characterized spirit as fragments of the psyche. However, I don't think they need to remain split off and can be married within the overarching psyche. And that's the ultimate work which culminated in Jung's mature opus on alchemy. Those facets of life need to be incorporated in order for us to become more whole and connected to our fullest potential as humans. Not just for ourselves as individuals, but for the healing of the world too. We can all witness the consequences of narcissistic self-absorption in the world around us if soul and spirit are left out of the equation, mentioning no names. But I think you might suspect who I have in mind. And one last thing that I would say on this bit is that I don't often use the language of soul and spirit in my work for two reasons. And one is that it can be quite alienating to some, and to others, it can tap into inflation. So I'm quite careful about the language I use, but the energies which fundamentally inform everything in the work. So I know some people sort of come to Jungian therapy and analysis sort of wanting to work with soul and spirit and archetypes and so forth, and of course some people do use that language and work kind of overtly with those, but myself I very rarely use that sort of technical language, because for me it just gets in the way, but that's me. Okay, I want to move on at this point to talk a little bit about chakras. And I've come up with a small exercise that I thought we could do together. I'll come to that in a moment. I'll just say a bit about chakras before getting to that. And obviously, I've no idea how much everybody here is familiar with the ins and outs of that. So so I'm being quite basic here, and forgive me if that's too basic for you. But what I wanted to say is that if you think in chakras, soul relates to the root or the base chakra, and is located around the perineum, and that's usually associated with the color red. While the crown chakra, which is usually associated with kind of violet and white, is the door to the spirit or the divine light, which is seen as the source. And spirit is accessed through the brow chakra, or the third eye, as it's often called. And chakras basically are energy centers which connect our physical bodies with the spiritual realm via an aura, which is like the membrane I mentioned earlier. And there are 7 basic chakras, although some systems break them down into more. And each is associated with a different part of the mind and the body. And I've got a little slide setting that out, please, Michael. That's it. And I've listed them top to bottom to mirror the physical locality to which they're linked, although usually they're displayed the other way up, in line with the flow of energy which rises up from the root. And that energy is, in India, is known as prana, and in China as ji. There's another slide, the next one, which sort of shows it mapped onto the body. The flow of energy is represented par excellence in Kundalini, where the energy of the snake is seen as rising up through the body from the root chakra and climaxes through the crown up to the spiritual heights and awakening. And you'll doubtless have seen many images representing that flow of energy like this. I mean, this is just something I found online. It's not very sophisticated. And each chakra is actually linked to an endocrine organ as well, which I think might be on that table. Oh no, maybe I left it off there, doesn't matter. Yeah. But attuning to the chakras can be really helpful in locating the locus of either a physical or an emotional issue or discomfort, which can then be attended to either through self-practice or with a healer. And there are many different ways of doing that, and of course many different practitioners around. So this is where I thought I might do the little exercise. Now, how can I see gallery? We could either have a vote of hands, or what I was thinking of doing, we could do the exercise, but if you don't want to do it, you can just sit back and twiddle your thumbs for 5 minutes or so. How does that sound? Yes, I can see somebody's thumb up. Great. And another person. Okay, good. Okay. So, okay. So what I would suggest is that you sit quietly and close your eyes. And just concentrate on your breathing for a moment. And if we start, we'll start with the root chakra. The exercise is going to take us up through each of the chakras very gently. And if you want to stop at any point, feel free to just stop and just sit quietly. That's absolutely fine. So the root chakra is in the area of the perineum. Basically, you're sitting on it. And if you imagine a lotus flower in the area of your perineum, a closed lotus flower, slowly take a moment to let that open. Let the lotus petals open and allow yourself to kind of feel into the energy that's associated with that part of your body. Just notice if any colours come to mind or any images come to mind, and nothing to engage with, just be with the energy in that part of your body. And then slowly close the leaves, close the flower, and we'll move to the sacral chakra, which is associated with the sexuality. And if we do the same thing, if you imagine in your mind's eye a closed lotus flower in the area of your sexuality, and allow those petals to just open as wide as you like or as narrowly as you like. And again, just be with that energy, whatever it is. And then slowly close the petals, let the flower come together. And we'll move up to the solar plexus, which is a bit further up your body, around the belly button sort of area, the diaphragm. And again, in your mind's eye, see the closed lotus flower. And slowly let the petals open, as much or as little as you like. Just breathe into that part of your body. Then gently close the petals again. And we'll move up and do the same thing around your heart area. Visualize the lotus, slowly letting the petals open. And feel what your heart has to say. And again, slowly close the petals. It's not a kind of blocking, you're closing down and kind of protecting that energy. Then we move up to the throat chakra. The same thing if you visualize the lotus in your throat area. And then slowly open the petals. There might be words that come to mind here, but don't get caught up in them. Just notice and let yourself breathe and be with the energy that's there, whatever it is. And again, just close the petals gently to protect what you've opened up. And then we shift our attention to the brow chakra, the third eye, which is on your forehead, just above your nose, between your eyes. The same thing with the lotus plant. Open the leaves gently. Let yourself breathe and just be with that part of your body. And gently close the leaves again, the petals rather. Close the petals to protect the energy. And then shift yourself to the crown chakra, which is right on top of your head. The same thing with the lotus. Allow the petals to gently open. As much or as little as you like, or as you feel safe to do. and gently close the petals. Protect the energy you've opened. And if it feels right to you, thank the energy. Okay. There's more that I will will go on to, but I think it might be useful at this point to give any feedback if you want to about how you experience that, and to just take a moment to process that. Would people like to do that? I can't tell. If there is anyone that wanted to say anything at this point, can people unmute themselves? I'm not quite sure. Yeah, or put a hands up thingy bobby. Yeah.
Okay. We have some questions and some things in the chat room. Maybe Ruth, I can share, or maybe
okay.
pick up. Yeah, maybe people can unmute themselves and ask. Okay. They say they can't unmute, Michael. Can you maybe help?
Can't unmute. Okay.
Not sure.
Yeah, the setting is allowing to unmute, so it should be possible.
Okay. So maybe they should unmute themselves. So how?
Yeah, I see some people are muted right now.
Yeah.
We can unmute, but we can't see anything except the slide, or at least I can't see anything except the slide.
Shall we leave the slide then for the moment?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. Please, Michal. Yeah, lovely. Great. We can come back to that in a moment if need be. Yeah. I've lost who was talking there because the screen's moved around.
Okay, maybe I can. Okay, if Judy.
No, I was talking, but I didn't. I just wanted to be able to see everybody. I didn't have anything.
I see. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, I can read some because maybe then people will start to share. So wait. So there is a lot of Madhuri Marelli, gratitude for opening and seeing. Someone says a lot of tears. And they basically, Monica Petroni loved the meditation. She felt like reaching my soul and spirit. So a lot of maybe spiritual work. Mia Clara says tears of grace. Maybe someone wants to share, or if it's okay if I read it.
As you wish. Yeah.
Not sure.
I will share. My name is Vida. I'm joining from Arcata, California, with my little 7-month-old son, Rio, here in my arms.
I can't see where you are. Where are you?
I'm in California, in Northern California.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed that meditation. It was so beautiful and illuminating and connecting. And it was surprising to notice that most of my chakras really just brought a lot of brightening and illumination. But at my throat chakra, there was an energy that I almost wanted to distract myself from, like I didn't want to stay with it. And when I found the capacity to return, I got the message, you know what you know. You know what you know. And something connected to that. And so that was surprising, unexpected, and really beautiful. So I appreciate you and this very nourishing conversation. Thank you.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. Yeah. I still can't see where you are on the screen, but I can hear you. Yeah. Yeah. Mm.
Maybe someone else wants to share. Maybe just use the reaction button so that we can see you, or just speak maybe.
Mm. I mean, I can go on. There's more that I was going to say, but it just seemed like a moment. It seemed important to kind of leave some space around this. Yeah. Mm. Okay. I'll go on with a bit, and of course there'll be more time to share if you want to. But what I wanted to go on and say is that in Taoist practice, the chakras are described as the trunk of Tao. And in that model, the sexual center is also seen as the spiritual center, which reveres sexuality as sacred. And I came across a fantastic new book translated from Japanese by somebody called Chiga, which was based on his deep study of the Tao Te Ching, which, as you probably know, is a sacred treatise written by an older contemporary of Confucius. And in Chiga's travels in China, he met this holy man called Mr. M, mysteriously. And Chiga discovered that, in fact, the Tao Te Ching is written in code, so that the characters in Chinese writing are called shakuji, and the same characters can have different meanings. And so where the text looked as if it was saying A, B, C, D, in fact, it was a code for something much more mysterious. And the translation in this code revealed a deeply sacred sexual meaning to the esoteric text, which I found absolutely fascinating. And a practice that Chiga discovered is called Yama, Y-A-H-M-A, which is a sort of Chinese form of yoga, which links Kundalini and Tantra, which she described in a really inspiring way. And he came across this practice in a very remote village in China, where he experienced what he called a oneness on earth. And this is the goal, although that's much too much of a concrete word, but it's sort of the goal, you could say, of spiritual practice. And he recounts a harmony in the villages, which is all too distant from the lived experience of much of our lives in sophisticated Western advanced economies. And Chiba describes his wonder at what he witnessed in this remote village. And that there's a long slide where I've put where he said, I don't know if you want to put the slide up, but I'll read it. What he says is about the people in this village. He says, here we are, that's it. Their marital lives were not controlled by laws or government. According to the conditions, there seemed to be many patterns of marriage, such as one husband with some wives, one woman with some men, a night visitation marriage, and so on, all based on one husband with one wife. To my surprise, even though several patterns of marriage existed freely, a perfect balance was kept as a whole. The whole of the relationship between males and females in this village created such a perfect harmony, as if all were united into one complicated organic existence. It was as if all the people were lovers who understood each other, and no jealousy was felt because of physical contact with the opposite sex. It was because they didn't have a personal desire to seek for the opposite sex within their psyche, where they're satisfied with the great Tao. It was the same toward other living beings. It was impossible to monopolize a fortune, and they didn't have a concept of fortune itself. After that experience, I came to marvelously understand the mental state in which people are so hungry for money or power. The desire by civilized people for tangible things is a compensation for lack of love. We've confused the spiritual world and the material world in our psyches. Do you want to take the slide down now, Michelle? Yeah. And I mean, that last sentence is, of course, the nub of it. Can I just check timing with you, Mancha? Because I think
Yes,
yeah.
I wanted to say that we have more or less 25 minutes for questions and answers. So now, if you have any questions from the public, please raise your digital hand or write the questions in the chat. I can read, maybe I missed some before. Just bear in mind that we record the webinars, or when you contribute,
you leave the questions in the recording so people are visible.
Yes, they are
Yeah.
visible.
Okay.
There was just one question about the article of Johansen. So if you can provide the citation and the link to the article, but maybe we can do that in the chat and put it in the chat after.
It's Johansen. It's JAP volume 65. I can put it in here, can't I? Chat. How do I do it?
Yeah, but we can do it if you can share it later, and we will put it on the chat in the YouTube maybe.
Oh, perfect.
Don't
Okay.
worry.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So, okay, if anyone has some questions, maybe it's time to open the floor to the public. Okay, I can begin. I have prepared my own question, Ruth, because I was very interested in the topic. And I was especially moved by the opening paragraph in the introduction of your book. I will just paraphrase it shortly, that you have looked into the face of darkness and survived, and you needed the courage to do so. It's a very touchy, let's say, beginning. So my question is, do you think we also need the courage to develop spirituality? And how would you link it maybe with the concept of the shadow? It made me think in Jungian terms.
We start with an easy question, shall we?
Yes, I wanted you to struggle. Sorry.
It does take courage, but it's a different sort of courage than facing the shadow. I mean, for some people, the light is their shadow, and it's frightening and difficult, and that's why the protection of closing down the lotus petals is so important, because otherwise our energies just go pouring out, and these are precious energies that need to be protected. I mean, what I meant in that bit about having faced, well, it came the other way around, really, because my spiritual path began before I met Jung, which is where I sort of went into the kind of dark stuff. But one of the things that one of the reasons that took me into therapy in the very first place is because in my spiritual community, as so many, nobody was able to cope with the shadow and the difficult aspects of life. And so it can become a kind of flight from reality, which is why for me it's so vital that spirituality is earthed. Yeah. And that was one of the things that I paid a great deal of attention to throughout the book, to kind of keep things anchored to the earth, because otherwise it just becomes fairy dust. I'm not sure that directly answers your question, but
yes, it opened maybe a few more, but it is a great answer.
okay. Yeah. Anybody else?
Maybe I could ask, how would you work with this kind of topics in practice, especially with someone who only heard of chakras in a very, very I don't know, they only heard that they existed, never had any experiences or any kind of spiritual practice at all?
Well, I work with them all the time, but I never use that language. Never use that language. I mean, I take my lead from the patient. If a patient uses certain words, I'll kind of pick up on that, because then it resonates with them. But I don't impose this language. But I mean, I will often, like, I'll ask somebody what they're feeling, and I'll ask where they're feeling it in their body. And so that immediately links it to a chakra, and gives you a hint about how you might proceed. Yeah. Is that the sort of thing that you mean? Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Thank you.
Yeah. Mm.
Okay. We have two raised hands. Sorry, Ruth, if I'm interrupting.
No. I saw hand up. Margaret.
Yes. Steglińska.
Hello, I'm Margaret from Poland. I've got a question about the meaning of meeting of two souls.
Yeah.
Does it mean that an individual wants to seize the brotherhood of the other person, or sees that his or her soul misses something and wants to grow through the meeting of the other person's soul?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch all of that. The meeting of two souls.
Yeah, does it mean that another person's soul, the connection, the similarities, or he sees in his own soul the missing part and wants to grow through the meeting of the other soul?
It could be either of those. I mean, when two individuals sit together and allow themselves to feel into their depths, it's just there. It's not that you have to confect something special. It's who we are. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, maybe Judy.
Yes, hi. I'm curious, Ruth, to explore just a little bit more about this village, which is in harmony.
Yeah, yeah.
In the Tao, is that right? You would say this village, or this author was saying this village is in the Tao.
Yeah.
And is it and I'm just, I haven't read it and I don't know, but is it are you saying, or is he saying, that because of the freedom of sexuality, of the freedom of partnership and the flow of exchange of sexual energy, that the sexual chakras are open and producing lots of, or permitting a lot of rising of energy, and then the harmony is experienced.
I think it's the other way around, that because they're in harmony, they can be so free. I mean, I find it, it is extraordinary, because jealousy is just a feature of life, isn't it? And I'm somebody that feels jealousy very easily. So the idea of this kind of polyamorous community where everybody is free from that is just like, how can that be possible? So I mean, I'm only telling you what he encountered. I find it extraordinary, but I believe him, you know. I mean, it's
Okay, well, that's helpful. So the other way around. So they're in harmony, and their lives, they're in the Tao. And so, as an example, there can be this freedom, and it's
yeah.
not there's not that antipathy or that jealousy, or because instead there's love or something else, Tao, harmony, balance.
Well, it's tricky, isn't it? I mean, we feel those insecurities when we're not complete, don't we?
Yeah.
By, you know, however you want to put it. And so if you were to achieve that level of balance that he talks about, which is kind of ideal. I mean, I have to kind of put in that caveat because it seems so incredible, really.
A Shangri-La, kind of like a Shangri-La place. Yeah.
Exactly. But whether it's true or not, or real or not, it might sort of help us sort of put some pieces of the puzzle together about what makes us so susceptible to those difficult feelings, that makes harmony so challenging.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
It's a wonderful book, I can tell you. It's absolutely beautiful. Yeah.
You also put that, or maybe you did put that.
No, I didn't, but I'd be happy to. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm. Any more?
We have one question from the chat, Ruth.
Oh, okay.
From Ka Yip. So the question is, could the theory of soul, earth, water, and spirit, fire, air, explain in some way the condition of derealization, depersonalization, where the symptoms are usually dizziness, sensation of being about to faint or disappear?
Oh, hold on. No, I couldn't quite catch all of that. Could the theory of soul, earth, water, spirit, in some way, the condition of derealization? I still don't understand the question, I'm sorry to say. Explain the condition of derealization and depersonalization.
Can maybe the person share, Kaib? I don't know.
I mean, I simply don't know. I don't. Yeah.
Sounds a bit like dissociation, that description to me.
Yeah. I'm not sure. I mean, how that could be linked to earth, water, fire, air, and so forth. So I don't know. Yeah.
It's difficult to tell without the person asking the question. So. Okay. Maybe Michelle, another question?
Well, it actually, and hopefully you can hear me well enough. It tags to that last question, and that is, I've had a client that has experienced extreme vertigo.
Oh, okay.
And so one of the ways we've languaged that is the possibility, given her early childhood experiences, of really a lot of invalidation, a lot of parental control where her needs and wants were run over. And so one of the feelings I have, and I'm taking it a bit from Marion Woodman, is this idea that she never really embodied, which means there's a dysfunction in the root chakra from, my understanding of the systems, right?
Yes.
And so how does one help one get grounded? Which I think if I'm tracking with Kip, it might have something to do with how could we use symbolically the elements of earth and water to facilitate that versus too much fire and air, because she's very much a thinking type and creative and that floating kind ofness.
Oh, thank you. That's really helpful, actually. Yes, yeah. But
So I don't.
Coming into the body is absolutely essential, isn't it? And yeah. And so
Yes,
that counterbalance vertigo, wouldn't it? Yeah. Although I mean I've had vertigo myself, and it's an awful thing. So I don't know if that would work, but it as an idea it sounds as if it might be helpful. Most people have got their pictures off, haven't they, for some reason? So it's difficult to know who's where.
Yeah, it's true.
Or if they're still there.
I hope they are. Maybe we have some other question. Anyone?
I'm still here. Thank you, Amanda.
Okay. We have one question from Vita Hofweber. So she's curious if you can give a brief case example from your practice.
Of what? Of
maybe how
these themes explicitly.
yeah.
Well, as I said, I don't work explicitly with these themes. I don't use that language, even though people get very angry that I don't.
So can I maybe basically you share, you discover, or you ask the client, so you go with what the client brings probably
yes,
in the session.
Exactly. Yeah. But the idea that I mentioned earlier of kind of seeing where somebody is in their body is kind of very basic to the way I work. And that's not from Jungian training, that's from my previous training. It's one of the few things that I've carried forward and kind of integrated into my approach, because being rooted in the body is to me absolutely vital, and being able to track where somebody is in the body to help them come down deeper into their depths and come down through the chakras is very important. Because if you get stuck at a kind of throat level or a chest level, you're not going to go anywhere. You just kind of go around in circles, because you're not encountering the kind of deep feelings which reside in the lower chakras. So it's actually really important in the way I work. And well, I mean, probably in the way most people work, even though you might not put it in those ways.
Okay. Oh, Ilinka, hi.
Hi. So I wanted to ask Ruth about the risks of inflation with the spirit.
Yes.
And maybe also if there might be also an inflation with soul, if we could reflect on this also. Thank you.
Yeah, either of them can tap into inflation. That's again why I'm so focused on keeping it earthed, so that it doesn't become a nonsense, because that's no good to anybody, and it's not real. It's just hot air, isn't it? So the answer is by anchoring through the body to the earth. But it's tricky, because when somebody might be inflated and kind of in those aspects and kind of wanting, I want to work on the spirit and blah, 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 it can be dangerous to challenge. You can get a lashback from that, because people can be very attached to thinking, they're special, or whatever it might be. And so that needs to be counterbalanced.
Ruth, I'm wondering about your thoughts, just to piggyback on that, of someone who has a lot of physical, like say medical trauma. So there's no sense of indwelling in their own bodies, and then inviting them in the way you so gracefully have, and just, tempering that in terms of, if it's not safe in the body, then how do we make that bridge?
If it's not safe in the body, then you can't go there, and so you couldn't do that sort of exercise, because it just wouldn't work. And
Traumatizing, yeah.
So the number one step would be to find a way of getting back home in the body. Yeah. But I'm not sure you're talking about physical trauma.
Yeah, I have some patients who got a lot of medical crisis, like surgeries, transplants, losing vision, all sorts of things.
Well, those aren't necessarily bars, because these are, although they're in the body, they're energies. So they don't require physical fitness of any sort. So if somebody is grounded enough, there's no reason why you couldn't think in those terms. But, I'm loath to comment, because obviously I don't know who and what you're talking about, so I don't want to sort of tread on anything inappropriately. But but with care, there's no reason why you couldn't. Yeah.
Thank you.
So somebody sort of carried on the question about working with the different.
Yes, I wanted to read.
Yeah.
So how you work with these teams explicitly, and how you respond when you notice someone in their upper chakras. But I think that you already responded in a way.
Well, one of the ways I do it, which I haven't said, and which is not Jungian, as I say, it's from my previous training, and so a lot of people might think it's not analytic. But if somebody's sort of stuck in their chest, I encourage them to kind of breathe deeper into their body. And it works. If you can bring somebody down, if they can bring their attention down deeper into their body, you get to the feelings. Yeah.
Okay, maybe just the time for the last question, if anyone. seems like not.
That's okay.
Okay. So thank you very much, Ruth, for today. And we maybe to say that we will put a link to Ruth's latest publication and website in the chat. Ruth, thank you so much for joining us today, and we are honored to have you here, and we look forward to having you back in the future. So thank you. And we will. Sorry. Yeah.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you. It's been very, very good. Yeah.
All be available on YouTube. When we also put the link to the late Jungian book by Pia Skogeman in the chat. And we say goodbye for today and hope to see you here again next month. Just briefly, on November 13th, we have the honor of welcoming a very special guest, Elena Lack, and she will be presenting her latest book, a very interesting book, Trauma, Denial, and Evil, Possessed by Myth, Wrapped in Archetypes, published by Jungian. So say the date, hope to see you then, and until then, take care and goodbye, and see you next time.
Thank you so much. Good night. Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye. Good night. Ciao.
Bye.